We have to recover the land and give it back to the peasants who don't have any. You soldiers are the sons of peasants. We know that you have to follow the orders of your bosses. We understand that. Don't worry. We don't want a confrontation. We are peacefully claiming our rights as Hondurans, as peasants, under the agrarian reform law.
Honduras is the eye of the whirlwind that is sweeping Central America. Desperately poor, it is surrounded by neighbors racked with violence and civil war. This is the underlying reality of Honduras. This is why there is war and revolution in Central America.
Aquí la vida del campesinado hondureño es lastimoso.
The life of the Honduran peasant is pitiful. People here live naked. We live without medicine, sick. People don't have a place to live. We don't have education. We peasants are all illiterate. We don't have land to cultivate. We are alive only because there is air to breathe and because there is sunlight. We're just surviving because that is all we've got.
I think they're pushing foreign ideas on the peasants, on the peasant leaders anyway. They're trying to tear our country apart. You know what they say. When the river is full, the fisherman prospers. In other words, we're talking foreign hands here. To me, it's communism.
We are not communists. We don't even know what the devil communism is. And we're not guerrillas either. We're just peasants. And there is an agrarian reform law here in Honduras, and we are fighting for it because it is the only law that protects us poor people.
The polarization between rich and poor has led to armed struggle and revolution throughout Central America. Honduras, the poorest country in the region, has not yet exploded. The evidence of deep social unrest cannot be ignored. We will see Honduras through the eyes of a remarkable woman. Elvia Alvarado has devoted herself to organizing landless peasants for the last 18 years. The mother of 6, she has been arrested and tortured by the military. Hers is a story of a woman's quest for liberation, both personal and social.
Mi papá fue un hombre que él no supo apreciar las fuerzas de mi mamá.
My father did not appreciate my mother's strength. He did not feel that women were human beings with rights, who were capable of making decisions. He was totally macho. Everything we had, he wasted on drink and women.
Con el pulmón de mi pobre madre, él se lo bebía y lo botaba en la calle con más mujeres.
And finally he walked out on my mother and left her with nothing, nothing but 7 kids.
Lo único que le dejó fueron 7 hijos.
School for Elvia only lasted until the 2nd grade.
Me acuerdo yo que para los 15 de septiembre.
I remember when we used to march in the holiday parade. All the other kids with their nice clothes and shoes, and me with my poor bare feet. And I said to myself, next year, I'm going to have shoes too. And I worked hard all year and sold stuff to people for pennies so I could buy my uniform and my shoes. And that's how I got my first pair of shoes.
Mi parcito de zapatos.
Elvia was raped and had her first child at 15. Forced to leave home, she moved to the capital where she worked as a maid. She had 2 common-law husbands who treated her the same way her father had treated her mother. Dissatisfied with her life, she joined a mother's club organized by the Catholic Church, where women learned how to improve their lives. It was exciting, but she soon realized that the church wasn't willing to go far enough. They would give families food, but they wouldn't help them to get the land to grow it.
Mi trabajo me hizo impulsar más la lucha, porque yo iba a las aldeas, yo iba a los caseríos, yo iba a las ciudades.
My work made me realize that the struggle had to go further. As I went around to villages, settlements, and towns, I saw the misery of the peasants, their exploitation, their horrendous existence. It was as if they were not human beings, as if they did not have the right to exist.
Tuviéramos derecho a la vida.
Elvia was well on her way to becoming an organizer, but there was trouble at home.
Yo era una mujer que vivía marginal en mi casa, ¿verdad? Por mi marido.
I lived a marginal existence in my house with my husband. From the moment I started working with groups, I began to have problems with him. And finally, I had to separate from my husband because he didn't like what I was doing. Well, he's just one person, but there are lots of people who need me.
Her courage and determination have gained her a role traditionally held by men. Elvia is now a leader in the fight for land, working with the National Congress of Rural Workers. 65% of Honduras' labor force is in agriculture. 500,000 of its 4.5 million people are landless, while 5% control over half of all the arable land. An agrarian reform law on the books since 1972 calls for the redistribution of uncultivated land and limits the amount of land individuals can own. But the Land Reform Agency has become bogged down in a sea of red tape, and the government seems to lack the political will to implement its own agrarian reform program. The slow pace of bureaucracy has prompted peasant organizations to take direct action. Every year during planting season, thousands of peasants take over land throughout the country in what they call land recoveries.
Aquí pues estamos haciendo una lucha, ¿verdad? Y aquí pues nosotros, nuestro objetivo es ganar.
We are struggling here, and our goal is to win. There are 400 men here on this land, and that means that there are 400 families without bread, without food. That's why they're recovering the land, to be able to work, just to survive.
Medio vivir.
Porque yo, en primer lugar, yo soy una persona que tengo 6 hijos.
I'm a guy with 6 little kids. They're naked, undernourished, they're all sick and in bad shape. And the only way I can solve these problems is by having a little piece of land that I can harvest. And over there, where we've been, it's just impossible. And furthermore, they accuse us of being subversives. Can you imagine? It just isn't so. It's hunger that we're suffering from.
When he can find work, he makes around $2 a day, about average in a country where rural workers earn around $300 a year. But with half of the labor force unemployed or underemployed, work is hard to find. This group occupied 1,000 acres of choice land used to raise cattle for export.
El terreno que el ganado debe de ocupar.
These cows should be living where we're living now. And we Christians should be living where the cows are. And anyway, what good are cows to us? We can't even buy a bottle of milk. It's so expensive.
This land is just part of the 10,000 acres owned by Nicolasa de Gastel, a peasant who married a rich landowner. To her, what the peasants did was an illegal invasion.
Bueno, la diferencia que yo veo entre recuperar y invasión, ¿verdad?
There's a difference between recover and invade. You recover something that was once yours, that you are returning to. But that's not the case here, because I inherited this from my husband, and I've got the papers to prove it.
No, nosotros no hablamos que es invasión.
We don't call it an invasion. The Contras who are here in Honduras are invaders. And a while ago, we were also invaded by the Salvadorans. But we're not from another country, so we cannot invade our own country.
It's a cycle that repeats over and over again. This was the third time the peasants had occupied this piece of land, and as usual, the first thing they did was plant their corn. Like before, they were removed by the army, and 150 of them ended up in jail on charges ranging from trespassing and property damage to subversion.
In
this country, when we poor insist on our rights, they prosecute us to get rid of us. And that's how the rich hang on to what they've got, with no concern for the poor. That's all they care about.
The fight has taken its toll. Peasants have died in confrontations with the army and landlords.
Yo he pasado momentos de decepción.
I have gone through moments of disappointment, anguish, and pain. Because the peasant movement is my whole life. When I lose a comrade, I lose part of my strength.
A mis compañeros yo les tengo un gran cariño, un gran amor.
I feel a deep love for my comrades. When they have been killed, it has really been sad because I love them so much.
Sí, yo les tengo gran cariño, para que no lo niego.
There are times when the peasants lose, but sometimes they win. This group occupied land and got it. Now the details are being worked out with the government officials.
Sí, el alambre cae en las mejoras, y el alambre nosotros lo necesitamos para echar nuestro cerco que va a continuar las 45 manzanas. ¿Me entendés?
We need the wire to mark our boundaries for the 200 acres, understand? If you're going to take it down tomorrow, it can come down today, because right now it's in the middle.
Let's be patient. Please try to stay calm and be patient, and we'll work everything out.
Allí estamos.
We're staying. We've drawn our boundaries. Just leave us alone.
This part of the land is being well used, and the owner is giving you the piece that isn't.
Once the conflict is solved, the surveying starts. Another farm that the peasants recovered is now a successful co-op that supports 55 families. It used to belong to Nicolasa de Gastel's daughter, Consuelo, who raised cattle and crops for export. Like many landowners, she doesn't agree with the way land reform is carried out.
Bueno, sí, yo estoy consciente de que el campesino necesita de tierras.
I understand that the peasants need land and they should have it, just so it doesn't harm production or landowners. There is plenty of land available, but the problem is that it's far from the road and doesn't have the improvements that they want. So they'll just have to work hard as we did when we started out.
We think that most of the land that's been given to the peasant is not given the yields that should be given. Most of it is empty, and most of it is in worse shape than it was before the agrarian reform.
It's true that in most cases the lot of the peasants hasn't improved. In fact, it's gotten worse, and that's because most of the land they've gotten is bad.
Gautama Fonseca, former labor minister and author of the agrarian reform law, feels that the intent of the law has been perverted.
Pero en el caso del campesinado nacional, a quien se le hace adjudicaciones de parcelas de tierra.
The land distribution to the peasants is taking place without technical assistance or the economic resources needed to develop the land to make it productive. As a result, it's a tremendous waste. Agrarian reform has disregarded the fact that it's not enough to give a little bit of land to people. You've got to equip them so that they can make good use of the land.
This group of 25 families ended up with a poor piece of land way up in the mountains. With no credit or help, they are barely surviving.
When
we run out of beans, all we have is tortillas with a little salt. We've got eggs, but we have to sell them if we want to get salt. So if I eat the eggs, how am I going to buy the salt? So I don't eat the egg.
3 of her 10 children have died of malnutrition and diarrhea. Her 11-year-old daughter has been sick for 2 years. It takes her a 2-hour walk carrying the child to get to the nearest clinic, where there's no guarantee that she will get medical attention. This kind of story can be heard all over Honduras, where 85% of all peasant children suffer from malnutrition, and the infant mortality rate is the highest in Central America. How did things get so bad? Honduras suffers from underdevelopment and foreign domination, conditions that sap a country's energy just as malnutrition affects its people. Like many underdeveloped countries, Honduras also suffers from the classic syndrome of weak democratic institutions and a too strong military. They used to say that Honduras was so poor that it couldn't afford an oligarchy. The Spaniards found little to exploit here, but the American fruit companies did, arriving at the end of the 19th century to establish huge banana plantations along the north coast. The plantations didn't bring prosperity to the Banana Republic. Instead, they created a dependency on export agriculture. After World War II, other export crops were introduced, forcing large numbers of peasants off their land. The result has been a steady decrease in the standard of living, and even the massive infusion of U.S. aid, which has totaled over $1 billion in the 1980s, has done nothing to solve its economic problems or make improvements in the lives of the poor.
It's very important for the United States that this country develop socially and economically, because if that does not happen, all Honduras will try to move to live into the United States. They will either immigrate crossing the Rio Grande or any other way possible, or the social problems of this country will become so bad that we will have either communist or situations so difficult that any foreign power that comes into these countries will be able to take over.
But is U.S. aid helping Honduras or making it more dependent?
The funds are provided in response to governmental plans which they are moving forward on to reduce their deficits, to develop greater self-sufficiency, to increase the integrity of the judicial system, to improve their democratic institutions. In other words, it's not just handouts. That's not the way this aid program works.
I say that Honduras is being kept by the United States. It's like an addict to a drug. The basic problems of the Honduran economy still persist. So what the economic assistance of the United States does is to keep the situation as it is, an artificial situation.
Aquí, por parte de Ronald, entran millones.
Ronald is sending millions and millions of dollars, but we never see them. Every day we just get poorer and poorer.
A look at the map helps explain the United States' interest in Honduras. It occupies a strategic position between El Salvador and Nicaragua. The United States now maintains a strong military presence in the country. In 1980, 93% of all assistance to Honduras was economic and 7% was military. By 1987, economic assistance had dropped to 24% of the total. Security assistance, which includes military aid and direct unrestricted payments to the Honduran government, had risen to 76% of all U.S. aid.
We are having the necessity of this strong military force because we are very much inclined to believe that we are in danger of a war, which is an illusion. Our worst enemies, in fact, are not the Salvadorians or the Sandinistas. I think that our worst enemies are our own social problems that are not properly solved by the Honduran government.
According to Amnesty International, the death squads that were active in the early 1980s have been reactivated and are now being used against critics of the government.
The security forces in Honduras are now disappearing people up to December 1985, and ever since they are just killing people. There are no more political prisoners in Honduras.
At this point, political violence is not as common in Honduras as in neighboring countries. Agrarian reform, despite all of its problems, has served until now as an escape valve to ease the pressure. But time is running out.
Ahorita hay gran represión, pero se puede hacer algo.
Right now, there's a lot of repression, but you can still do something. When we can't take it anymore, our blood, the little that we have, is going to cry out, enough. There will be no peace, only war. We're going to have war, but only as a last resort.
Pero eso serían las últimas consecuencias.
Yo diría que lo que viene en los próximos años.
What I see in the coming years is a similar situation to what's happened in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Nicaragua, an almost permanent state of civil war, because we haven't dealt with our problems the way that we should have years ago.
Hondurans would like to see the United States play a more constructive role in their country.
What we want is self-determination. We want your support, along with the economic and technical help for our development, but without any interference at all in the political arena.
Regardless of United States policy or what their own government does, the poor in Honduras are pushing for changes. Peasant organizations have launched literacy campaigns in an attempt to wipe out the 84% illiteracy rate in rural areas. Cooperatives have established their own schools to give their children an education that they never had. There's also a big effort to organize women so that they can play a more active role in the advancement of their communities.
Podemos hacer mucho por nosotros las mujeres.
We can do a lot for ourselves as women, so we won't feel left out. Some men say, sure, my woman can participate, but the problem is that then she says I can't, because I have to grind the corn, I have to cook for my husband, I can't leave my baby alone in the cradle, and right there, she is shutting herself out.
I asked her husband.
What's his name?
Francisco, the tall one outside. He says she's not going to come.
A woman alone cannot change anything. We have to unite, peasant women and women workers. We have to organize ourselves. Why? To demand our rights. Yes, we'll have to take care of our homes, but we also have to take care of our organization, because it is part of our life.
If these women could see their dreams come true, what would the world be like?
Yes, a better life. Like in the movies I have seen. We'd like to work together, men and women. Any work at all. It would be so nice to work.
People like Elvia Alvarado represent the last hope for peaceful change in Central America. The road that they have chosen is a difficult one, but they are determined to reach their destination.
If this isn't resolved peacefully, we have to find another way to solve it, because we need land, and we're going to get it no matter what.